Morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast with myself and the amazing Angie Setzer. As well, Angie, rather than me, will be providing a rapid roundup of the latest pricing, flows, and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I better get the legals out the way. So, as usual, nothing discussed on this space session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Jones PIQ, or PIQ Suite, or indeed that of the hosts, which, as I've just mentioned, is awesome Angie and myself, Ryan.
Super
Happy.
awesome Ryan, who provides great emotional support throughout the 10
oh,
minutes.
oh, stop it.
Or
Stop it.
15, depending on what the
Yeah.
day is, right? And if I'm feeling a little windy. So yeah, happy first day of the week. Happy Monday to those who observe Mondays. I am disgruntled. We had the time change this week, so at least it'll give me a nice little joke with everyone, something to talk about. Don't you hate that time change?
Yeah.
So here we are, ready to start our week ahead. Currently, at the end of last week, we finished and we had basically taken the long way around, right? Corn finished unchanged on the May board, or down a penny on the December at the end of the week. So we had a lot of movement and ended up basically going nowhere, right? Soybeans were the same thing, had a lot of movement, finished the week pretty much unchanged. We were down a little bit, down about a nickel, but we were well off from the new contract lows that we had set. And here this morning, we're set for wheat to take off to the higher side. Why exactly? I'm not 100% sure. I guess we'll figure out as the day progresses, though the India forecast does look bad, or looks like it could worsen, I should say, into the end of March here. So developments over the weekend, what did we see? Well, we have a new prime minister, at least for the time being, in Canada. Interesting to note, our new prime minister in Canada is a former central banker, not only for Canada, but also for the UK,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Came in and helped. He is not a stranger to economic disruptions, you could say. He came in 2000, February of 2008, to take over as governor for the Bank of Canada, I believe. Don't yell at me if I get his Wikipedia page completely, off just a little bit. But he came in throughout the 2008 financial crisis. I guess there is some discrepancy or some disagreement, if you will, amongst Canadians as to how much he helped to get Canada through that whole entire rigmarole or whatever. But he was part of the gang of seven or the group of seven that we have that all come together and really worked to kind of orchestrate the world's response to the financial calamity that we had in '08. Fun fact, '08 actually was the year that I pulled up when trying to figure out when the hell we last saw such a massive reduction in market price as quickly as what we did. And in 2008, I have no idea why or what it meant or if it even means anything at all. But kind of fun fact while we're talking about it, we saw the corn market collapse 70 cents in 2008, from March 10th to March 24th, I believe it was. And from March 24th to April 10th that year, we rallied $1.16. So if you want to know what was going on in the world at that point in time, craziness, just absolute craziness. So he then was asked to kind of foray, work into politics, and perhaps, in another life, we would have seen him come into power in the Liberal Party over Trudeau, based on what I was seeing here over the weekend and what I was reading. But instead, he went to Britain and helped with Brexit. Or helped oversee
Yeah.
Brexit, I guess, to a certain extent, and then bounced back. You probably have more exposure to him than I,
Well,
obviously,
his
but
nickname was
yeah.
the unreliable boyfriend. So take away.
Oh, that's not
No,
great.
exactly.
I have a past experience with a few of those and can say it's not a good thing. But so he's been wandering around a little bit, and is, kind of come back into place, looking at changing. He said penny for penny on the Trump tariffs, and then is looking at changing some of the things with the with how they do their budget, like wants to have an operational budget and then a growth budget, if you will. Perhaps Lula should look into this in Brazil or something like that. But it is interesting with Canada simply because he could call a national election at any point in time.
Yeah.
He's just a temporary leader at this point, came in and took over the Liberal Party because Trudeau was stepping down. And so how Trump treats him could be a little bit different just simply because he is, kind of in the middle of an election, even if he's not in the middle
Yeah.
of an election. At any point in time, we could have one. And so, yeah, go Canada. But then we also saw Canada and China over the weekend. China really upped their tit for tat, if you will, and set 100% on canola imports. I believe we've got to dig into that whole thing and see what's happening there. But it's an important reminder too that China is not just trade warring with the U.S. at this point in time. China has got some deals that they're battling, with the EU, with Canada, with the U.S., and don't have a ton of room to maneuver to a certain extent. Though I will say we did get some consumer information out of China that indicates that they could, restrict food imports and things like that to for a certain amount of time. You could say, you are starting to see prices recover. China's domestic corn prices have hit a near 6-month high here recently on talk that they would or could limit the imports coming in. They do need or will need some level of imported corn to help blend out what they have, and just in general, even if it's well below. We initially thought China would import upwards of 20 million metric ton, then it turned into 15, then it turned into 13, and now it's sitting around 7 or 8. But even then, they have to source some corn at some point from somewhere. So you've seen their domestic prices hit 6-month highs. You've seen their domestic prices for soybeans on the rise. And there's been talk of auctions that have been canceled and a few other things. Really, when it comes down to it, China probably wants their domestic food prices to increase ever so slightly, just simply because they are battling deflation and don't really want to be. And so it gives them a little bit of room, and that kind of puts us in a spot where we aren't going to get much in the way of an answer as to what's going to happen between the US and China. Is there a phase one? Is there a phase two? Is there a phase whatever? We probably aren't going to really see much in the way of public progress, I would say, until Trump and Xi meet in June. So that could be 3 months of unknowns. Though we will continue to pay attention to what's happening in the domestic market, and what is going on overall. And then lastly, just kind of on the subject of domestic markets and what is happening overall, we're going to continue to watch what's taking place in Brazil. Part of the reason that you've seen China's prices on the rise when it comes to domestic soybeans is because you have had a delay in a Brazilian grade movement. That's not the only thing. We saw China restrict imports from Brazil at the end of January, really slow down their custom clearance that we've seen, their approval of GMO varieties and some of these other things. Like they're basically working to kind of create a little bit of a shortage domestically. A lot of folks thought that would be so we could see that reserve turnover, the government reserves be auctioned off and flipped. We haven't seen that yet, but we are watching some problematic, logistical developments. We had Barcarena, the port in Brazil that's responsible for upwards of 15 million metric tons, a 500 million bushel-ish of exports. Had a big Beltway go down. They're not going to be able to really take or export grain, it doesn't look like, until June at the earliest. So this is going to slow down that process. It's going to push some of the stuff that's already slated to move out of that port into other ports. And then the movement of grain into those other ports is going to delay, the ability to really ship. And this will have an impact. Why this is all important is it impacts Brazil's ability to put corn into the world market. Brazil doesn't have any corn anyway to put into the world market until probably July at the very earliest, if they have a solid safrinha crop and have, production come off as expected currently. But even now, you're probably going to see a 4 to 6 week delay in their ability to really, put product into the world pipeline with ease. Argentina, at the same time, is struggling, or they're going to have decent production, but you are seeing some potential talk that you will see limited exports. Farmer selling has been somewhat slow. There are a few other things, and so we should see a continuation of strong corn export demand, just simply because the U.S. remains the only supplier of consequence for about the next 4 months, if not 5. In addition, because of what we're seeing in Brazil with the slowdown in ability to ship and some of these other things, we could see other world buyers come to the US in the short term, even with all of the tariff uncertainty and all of these things, simply because Brazil is not able to supply beans into the world market, with the snap of a finger, like many thought they would be by this point in time.
Yeah.
Seems the basis rally and some of these other things. And so yeah, we'll be watching cash grain movement more than anything and what's happening there, because we've seen a really surprising rise in Brazil basis, both for corn and for soybeans. In the soybean one's even more surprising, just simply because you would not anticipate as harvest, kind of crosses the bend. Typically, I always say that, taking care of the last 70%, taking care of the last 30%, once you round that 70% level on harvest, it tends to get messy. People get full, things are, everyone's trying to get done. And you tend to see basis just absolutely fall apart. We're not seeing that. Last week, basis rallied 50 cents in Brazil. It's a logistical thing more than a supply thing, but it definitely tells you that, just because it says something on paper doesn't mean that the world end user is able to just source a bean and pick it up tomorrow. We've just got a lot of things. So lastly, we'll be watching the executive order on ocean freight, what I was speaking of, what charges, that sort of thing. Lots of stuff to be paying attention to this week. So sorry, I just had a soliloquy. That's what they call it.
Brilliant.
So
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh, cool. No, you done? Sorry.
Yes, I am done.
Awesome.
Yes. Can I finish? Can I finish? I am finished. Go ahead.
Perfect. Andy, thank you so much, as always, for being just an absolute star. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And as Andy said, plenty to talk about. So we'll see you all tomorrow for more.
We'll be back ready to rock. Yeah. Have a good one, guys.
Bye-bye.